Good evening, everyone. Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, and a very warm welcome to everyone at the Motherhood Club. I'm Ekta Sehgal, founder and chief strategy officer, Motherhood Club, meeting you all for the very first time in the year 2024. And what a pleasure it is to be back here live in front of each one of you. A lot of interesting conversations happen at Motherhood Club, varying from health, wealth, and happiness. Yes, the reason is that we have a mixed bag of people from different cities, countries, age group, the status, the position that they are in, young mothers, mothers to grown up kids, grandparents, fathers, grandfathers, a few single people who've been there supporting Motherhood Club, and a lot more. और मदरहुड क्लब पे जब भी हम आते हैं तो हम कुछ ऐसी बातों को लेके आते हैं जिसका महत्व हम सबकी जिंदगी में बहुत ज्यादा होता है। तो जैसा कि आप सब जानते हैं कि हम थर्सडे थॉट और फ्राइडे फंडा जैसे कॉन्सेप्ट्स भी लाए हैं। तो फ्राइडे फंडा जो एक कॉन्सेप्ट है हमारा जिसमें वी टॉक अबाउट समथिंग व्हिच इज इम्पैक्टिंग आवर प्रोफेशनल लाइफ एंड अ लॉट ऑफ अस हियर आर एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, राइट? So today we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn with our business coach, Mansi Gupta. Mansi is someone who I have known for years and a very smart, dynamic lady, I would say, who has now ventured out to be on her own. And she has over 18 years of experience across organizations and has trained more than 100 companies through her corporate training firm to build exciting entrepreneurial ventures. Now, she has worked with the HDFC Bank and Nagarro and helped a lot of people, develop different kind of expertise and is now helping a lot of individuals to build their expertise. But today, Mansi is here to talk about the challenges of starting your own entrepreneurship. And sure enough, there are many challenges that many of us would have faced, still face, and we don't know really whether the challenges that a women entrepreneur faces are any different than what a man would face. But we're going to get to know all of this from Mansi. So, very warm welcome, Mansi, at Motherhood Club. Good to have you here.
It's lovely to be here, Ekta. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited. And I think this is such a lovely platform for people to connect, to build a support group and really learn and, grow with each other. So thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. So, Mansi, the topic we've shared, the challenges of starting your own entrepreneurship, right? So, obviously, the very first question that comes to my mind is that should you stick around doing a job, or should you venture out to be an entrepreneur, like how I went branching out about 12 years back, and you've also branched out from being a corporate person to being an entrepreneur yourself. So, one, should one do that? And if so, how the transition is? Is it seamless? Or that's where the actual challenge begins?
Very interesting question, Ekta. And I think the answer is not that simple. I think, this is actually one of the challenges that I was going to talk about, which is that the challenge of really knowing yourself, right? The challenge of self awareness. And I think the answer to your question varies from person to person. All of us have a different risk profile. All of us have different liabilities, different constraints in our life. We also have different skill sets, right? So there are many such factors that need to be taken into consideration before making this, transition. Because, and I'm sure you'll agree, it's not an easy transition. It's not a seamless transition. It is an uphill battle. And, while in a job, you have the comfort of getting like this monthly salary credit. The fact is, in a business, you do not. So, depending on your personal, I would say, profile, this decision will change for every person, and it should be taken with a lot of thought and a lot of planning, I would say. Um,
Absolutely.
so, I mean, wouldn't you agree? I think there are a lot
Absolutely.
of people who actually thrive in jobs, you know. I don't think there's anything better about being an entrepreneur than being in a job. There are pros and cons of both sides.
You're right. I think what you said is very right, that it is the very first challenge is in taking that very decision, that whether you want to quit your job and start something of your own. And if you do start, what do you work upon? And talking about you touched upon the financial aspect also, since I come from a financial background, and I would say that that becomes a very, very important factor because, not that I'm going to take away that part of the conversation from you, I'm sure you're going to touch upon that. But if you do not have the uh, overall stability of mind, body, finance, and everything, emotional, till then you cannot really be successful in doing what you want to, because at the back of the head there will always be that, how do I manage my day to day chores, how do I manage the finances, how do I manage my responsibilities, liabilities, and so on and so forth. And I'm not sure, Mansi, whether the same thoughts would come to a man and a woman. Ideally it should,
I
but
would
not too sure.
say,
So what do you say? Yeah.
yeah, I think the same thoughts, the same questions need to be answered regardless of gender. However, the answers will vary and the constraints vary often, in both I don't want to say positive and negative, but let's just say the types of constraints. The kind of society that we live in, there are often more financial expectations from men. They are considered, the traditional sort of breadwinners of a family. And therefore, you may expect them to take into consideration, this aspect, right? And they may want to maintain a lower risk profile. Um, on the other hand, women sometimes, one, they have the benefit that they could be sort of the second earner in the family, which might allow them to take bigger risks, to be a little bit more inventive and experimental in the kind of work that they do. But on the other hand, they might also be dealing with constraints of finances. The fact is that financial literacy in women is still nowhere compared to financial literacy in men, and a lot of women actually do not control their own money. So, I would say that women are dealing with their own kinds of constraints where, firstly, they may not have had the right education or the right exposure to understand financial planning. I mean, Ekta, both of us, we knew each other in HDFC. So we come from like a finance background, right? But the fact is that in a lot of households, the finances are still not being managed by the woman. So, access to money, understanding of money, and being able to sort of take these financial decisions, that's a constraint women deal with. So, again, financial constraints are there on both sides, but the type of constraints do vary, I would say, across genders. Not for everyone, of course. I think, I can say personally, I've been quite fortunate in the kind of support system that I grew up in, but I know a lot of women who do still struggle with, the stereotypical way the society
Absolutely.
is structured.
Absolutely. So before we go ahead, thank you everyone who's joined us. And we have Leena Prakash who's saying that yes, decision to be an entrepreneur comes with a lot of financial planning. And she also says that, men are assumed to be more responsible financially, which is a myth that is now breaking down. And who would agree more with this, Leena, than me? Because I've been advocating financial literacy, financial abundance, independence for women for almost 7, 8 years now, talking about it and trying to like literally drill it into their head that we are no less. In fact, I would say that we are equally competent, or even more for that matter, for many factors which come to us very naturally. But anyhow, we're going to leave that conversation for some other time. But women have extra responsibilities, as Ela says. She's also an entrepreneur herself. So, Mansi, moving from the financial aspect, otherwise, trust me, I'm just going to get into that because that's my favorite topic. But moving on to the other challenges that, an entrepreneur would face. So maybe, you can talk about the general challenges and then we can touch upon if there are some unique challenges that women face while they become an entrepreneur. So, what do you think are the most important or most critical challenges that an entrepreneur goes through when they press the accelerator?
Right. I'd like to say that, all the challenges that an entrepreneur faces can typically be categorized into two parts. You have the practical, pragmatic challenges, and then you've got the emotional, mental challenges. Let me start off with the more practical ones. Because we're sort of segueing into this topic from the finances, and in this I'd like to cover two specific challenges. One is not having a proper or a clear product vision. I think this is something which is let me explain this with an example, right? So say you've got the idea that you want to get into the fashion business, maybe clothes. And you decide that you have a good sense of style and you'd like to sell Indian wear. I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, when this thought comes into their mind, it requires the breakdown of actually defining what your product is, what your target segment is, and then what your, basically your typical four P's of marketing, right? That vision needs to be very clear. Because I mean, see, I'm in Delhi, right? And I can get a cotton kurta from like Sarojini Nagar market in Delhi for 300, 500 rupees. I can go to Select City Walk and I will find, kurtas which go all the way up again from the 300, 500 to tens of thousands and into lakhs, right? So, firstly, being very clear on what price point you want to sit at and how you arrive at that price point. It could be that you work backwards from the target segment that you perhaps belong to or you understand, or you sort of calculate it based on the input costs that you have. So, this clear understanding of where you're procuring your product from, what kind of markup you need to add to it to take care of like your operating costs, your basic profitability expectations, and then being able to see how you need to price this product. And once you've done this, right, it's sort of very circular, right? Once you've got a price in place, now you've got your target segment, which automatically sort of needs to be assigned basis that target, basis that price point. Because I can't go and set up a stall in Sarojini and start selling now designer wear, right? Similarly, I can't afford to have a shop in Select City Walk and have products which are selling at a thin margin. So this kind of understanding, I think, is really important. And secondly, once you have this understanding, having the financial plan to actually sustain this kind of operation. So, what I've seen often in entrepreneurs is that either they are too optimistic. So, they'll just say, okay, I'm going to start making money in the first month. So, all I need to worry about is my first month's operations, right? So, say we are talking about X amount, which needs to be spent every month. And they've got like, 2X in the bank and they feel that they are in a safe space. Suddenly, the money starts, running out and panic starts setting in. Why? Because they haven't really thought about the longevity of the business, right? So I think these kind of basic financial planning, things that you are taught in like a core MBA program, this kind of practical mundane planning does need to be done by every entrepreneur. And each of these points really fleshed out, because if any of these things break, they say, right, the a chain is as strong as its weakest link. And the fact is that all of these are equally important. So I would say on the practical side, a big challenge that entrepreneurs face is not having a robust financial and business model, and also not understanding how that model needs to be tweaked based on how the market is responding. Um, but what are your thoughts on this so far, Ekta, before I jump into the emotional challenges?
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you that, a lot of us, what my experience has been with some set of people, that when they move out of their job to be an entrepreneur is a knee jerk reaction, because you are either completely flustered at work, you don't want to, you don't want someone bossing around you, or you just at the drop of a hat said, okay, fine, you know what, I'm done. I want to just start my own thing without having that clarity, without having that vision, to as to what exactly you need to do. And that's exactly what even Lena is saying, that vision and clarity of the market is so vital to success. So because we don't think through that, so we haven't really done that backward calculation, as you're saying about the financial aspect also. You just go, and then suddenly the pot which has a lot of water, which is effectively money, starts to dry up, and that's where the panic button hits in. And the acceleration that you thought would maybe move from the gradually from the first to the second to the third and the fourth gear or fifth, suddenly you want to put it from the first gear straight to the fifth gear. So obviously, when you're driving, if the first gear suddenly you move to fifth gear without giving it the adequate speed, obviously the vehicle is going to give you jerks. And that's exactly, I think, what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs. And that longevity that you spoke about, I think, in our good old times, those traditional businesses that we heard of, the companies which are in existence for pretty much donkey years, who've uh, reached a point where people have established, they have grown, they obviously went step up, like the way you have these step up tea gardens. Gradually you get there, and it has to be a very well thought out. You have to have a vision. And I think maybe we'll I'll pause here to talk about that from when you talk about the emotional aspect. But yes, for anything, you have to have a requisite plan. It has to be well drafted, and you need to thrash it to the T. I think you need to be your own devil's advocate. You need to be your most, your biggest critic, where you kind of look at all aspects. And I think by being critic, I don't mean that you be negative, but you just be positively critical about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Um, and yes, Lena says that, it cannot be a trauma response, that has to be dealt with in other ways. You're right, absolutely, Lena. And I think, when you really step back is when you're able to look at things, you get the bird's eye view over there. So there is a question that has come for you, Mansi. Could you help us understand the basic framework to define the clear vision and decide whether to go forward with the business plan or not?
Hmm.
That's an
I think
interesting one.
it's an interesting one, though I think the answer will take a few hours. What I would like to though say is, and Ekta, I hope that's okay. I am actually conducting a webinar about this on the 3rd of February, and I think like Lena said, like you said, my webinar is also called Unlock Clarity. So if you're interested, please go ahead and register for that. But let me just give maybe some clues over here. I believe in that there are 6 types of questions that need to be answered in order to have a robust framework. Um, in For me, this is sort of a modification of the 4 P's of marketing. So you've got like your product, price, promotion, place. What I've added to that is person and process. And I think if you are able to be aware and be cognizant of each of these 6 pillars, right? I think you will have a good framework to build your business plan on. Shall we spend a couple of minutes talking about each of these? I don't know how you want to structure the talk.
Okay,
Um,
so it might be interesting to know a little bit about that, because I think
sure.
since that is a challenge that you've highlighted, wherein having a clear vision, a clear thought as to what exactly do you need to do, whether it is in terms of the 4 Ps, people and process. I think that is a very, very important in my experience. As a corporate person, also, I worked with one pretty much all the organizations actually that I worked with, whether they were existing organizations or, absolutely starting from scratch, they all gave me a flavor of being an entrepreneur or a startup, either the department was new, all right, in an existing company, or the entire team got changed, so everybody was new, or you just started everything afresh, so you got a chance to get into it. So what I could understand in those 11 years of my corporate job experience, not being an entrepreneur, I learned as to what one should not do, because what you should do, we all know it, but what is it that you shouldn't do is what I learned in those 11 years, which I think actually helped to kind of set up my business in a very in a very process driven way, because I think that was something that we learned in one of the common organization that we work, that processes are very, very important.
Yes.
Without process, everything falls down as like a pack of cards. And I think most organizations fail because they think they've done the planning well. And because the planning is weak, the execution for sure is weaker. And hence everything falls flat. And then you are in distress because you've infused money, you've infused your sweat equity into it, and then you don't know what is to be done. So yes, if you could dwell a little bit on this, it might be interesting.
Yeah, okay. Let's again, I'll break this down into two, right? So we'll start off with the core four P's, which is your, product, price, place, and promotion. Because I think this is something that I touched upon when I was talking about creating a business plan, right? It's a cyclical sort of consideration. You'll have a product that you want to sell. You will define a price for it basis the target segment that you have in mind. Once you've got your target segment, that will automatically define the place where that product needs to be sold, right? So we know that if I'm looking at selling, let's say, a 10,000 rupee kurta, I know the kind of places that I need to be, whether offline or online, right? Then it'll define my promotion, because I know that these kind of women will be attracted to these kind of promotions, right? So, for example, if let's say I want to be in bridal wear, I might want to make my choose exhibitions which are related to bridal wear, right? Like you've got stuff which happens usually in the winter months in Delhi. If I'm trying to be in sort of casual fusion wear, I might want to do these weekend kind of exhibitions in Select City Walk, DLF Promenade, or any of the bigger malls. If I want to be in, sort of mass market, low margin products, I probably don't want to be in a place where the rent itself is so expensive that it's going to eat away all my profit margin. So again, I would say very cyclical, but once you have an anchor, all the other things will automatically get defined from that. And if there is anything which is discordant in this relationship, the business plan will fail, right? So I would say those are my four core P's which need to be identified. And that becomes the foundation for your business plan, right? And then you've got the emotional aspect. That's the person and the process, I would say. So on the person side, I think at least what I'm referring to is having a high, very, very high degree of self awareness. And what I mean by that is, how are you as a person? How are you as a leader? What are the things that you are good at? How much time you have to devote to this project? How much you can do yourself, and how much you need to outsource? So, Ekta, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start out, they either start out too small, सब कुछ हम ही करेंगे, shoestring budget. I'll do my marketing also myself. I'll take care of my entire, order fulfillment myself. I'm going to, like, I don't want to spend any money on anything because my margin is critical, right? Either they start too small or they start too big. That, okay, look, I'm going to just flood the market. I'm going to have like the largest budget and, spray and pray, right? Something will hit and something will work. I would say either of these approaches are incorrect, right? Because the fact is, none of us are good at everything. And I think one of the critical skills an entrepreneur needs to have is this understanding of what they should do themselves, which they'll be great at, and what they should get people to do. So, when I say person, I mean yourself and then the team around you, which will automatically need to be set up basis how much you yourself can contribute to this company that you're forming, right? So that's the person, right? Um, and then as the leader of the organization, you will need to set the right, I would say, mood and tone. So what I feel is that with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, if again, if they're doing it for the first time, like you said, if it was a knee jerk reaction, often they haven't thought it through. If their financial plan is not in place, if they are reacting to things, right, panic starts setting in, they don't have the mindset mastery that they require to sustain the business. Like you said, it's a step by step process, right? So this balance in the person is really important. So balance of one, not being so stubborn that you just fall in love with your idea and refuse to take the feedback that the market is giving you, or being so reactive that I run an ad campaign for 3 days, I don't get results, I just say, oh, this idea is terrible, I'm going to just shut it, right? Or balance in your I would say even optimism. Either you're so optimistic that you don't plan for 6 months or 12 months of low or poor returns, or you're so pessimistic that you don't even do anything, so I would say that kind of understanding of yourself is really important. And then the sixth P that I have is process, which is, like you said, we've got a great business plan, but without the execution, what point is a business plan, right? I can write 100 business plans today. If they just sit in my drawer, they're worth nothing. Ultimately, a business plan is only worth the execution of it, right? And what I've seen is that when people are struggling against their own skill set, struggling against their own interest area, they will not be consistent. So, to me, execution and the process is really important to bring in, consistency of efforts, to bring in tracking of efforts, to be able to measure the success, and then use those cues to sort of tweak the entire business plan. So to me, these are the six P's, which sort of define the framework that a good business plan and a good business launch sort of sits on.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Before that, let me say the question was from Shubhangi, and she says that she's going to definitely join your session. So, thank you, Shubhangi. I hope Mansi helped you understand how a business plan can be and how you can clearly have a vision to decide whether to go ahead with the business or not. Before I give my comments, let me read out the two comments that have come. That Lena says teamwork and getting help, financial planning, the mindset to sustain, balance is the key. Absolutely. And consistency is the key. You're right, Mansi, is what Eli is saying. So, yes, I completely agree. And, if I look back 11 years, 12 years, of my corporate, or my rather my entrepreneurial journey, it's like a deja vu feeling that, okay, I need to have processes, whether I am a one-person show or a 10-person show. I need to get my processes in place because, like I said, that, when we worked in some startups, the only reason that it was falling flat was because the processes were not defined, and before you could even you had the target audience in place, but you didn't have a product to offer them. Again, there is a mismatch. So I'm sure there is a flow to this whole creating that whole process, that what comes first. It you cannot be in like a chicken and egg kind of a situation that acha client hoga to main product banaungi ya product hoga to main client leke aaungi. There has to be absolute clarity as to what these four P's are very important: your price, product, promotion, and what is the fifth, fourth? Yeah. And talking about the person who runs the business, I think that really plays a critical role. Your emotional well being, your ability to understand your, either being too detached or too attached, or your own mindset of being obsessive for that matter, that okay, it's my way or the highway. I don't think businesses can succeed. You may have the You may have a positive attitude towards your business. You may be extremely passionate about your idea, but if the idea is not appealing to someone, it's not convincing someone, and there is no sellability to it, then perhaps the idea is just an idea because it doesn't have a market. But a lot of people think that just because I have an idea, so I am there, I can just cut it out. A lot of times we forget to, I think, even analyze. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm going to step into that zone if you want to talk about it, but what's my threat to barrier? What's my entry barrier? A lot of us feel that there is uniqueness, freshness in our idea, बट क्या वाकई में वो फ्रेशनेस है? क्या हम कुछ अलग कर रहे हैं? क्या उसकी मार्केट है? मे बी है, बट वो किस तरीके से? दैट्स वेयर आई थिंक your packaging, your promotion comes into play. So a question to you from Ela: what advice would you give to a one woman army or a one woman team who's like a solopreneur and running her business? What would be your guidance or suggestion?
Yeah, I think firstly, the decision to go it solo is a brave one, right? Because, see, the fact is, entrepreneurship is a pretty lonely journey. You know, the person, Ekta, you were talking about, right? Your personality, right? The person is the captain of the ship. Now, whether there are other people on the ship or not, that's besides the point. But the fact is, you're the one steering the boat, right? So your personality sort of defines everything, and that's really important for you to understand. Now, what I feel that some of the challenges that solopreneurs feel is, I think, lack of a support system, because there are going to be ups and downs, right? There will be times when things are going great, and there are going to be many, many times when nothing is happening. And it can be quite demotivating. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people who will support you, um, and support you in the right way. So, what you don't want is a team, or friends who are just going to tell you that everything will be great. I think there is a time for that. But then eventually you do want people who will be honest with you and give you, true feedback. So I think that's really important. I think it's important to be a little, for lack of a better word, a little shameless in putting yourself out there, because I think when, and I'm going to make this assumption, Ekta, I don't know her, but I'm going to make this assumption that if you're a one woman army, chances are that you don't have a lot of facilities or the possibility of running huge marketing campaigns, right? So you're dealing with these constraints where money is not going to solve the problems of branding and exposure for you. So what you will need to do is you will need to lean upon contacts, or a network to put yourself out there. So I would say do that. And then my third advice would be, um, create metrics to keep yourself accountable. So, just the way you have a support system, you also need to have accountability partners, whether it's a person or whether it's a platform, that's besides the point. But essentially, a checklist of things that need to be, attained, over a measurable duration of time. So you might say, okay, today I'm going to do these three things, and then at the end of the day, you're sort of checking them off. Ekta, I think we've made a lot of day plans. We've learned a lot from shared managers. And the fact is, the advice remains the same, right? Regardless of the size or the nature of the work that you're doing, ultimately things need to get done. And if you're alone, there's nobody who's reminding you that you need to do them, and there's nobody who's shouting at you that you haven't done them. So you need to be your own boss, but you also need to be your own supporter. So that would be my advice. Be firm, but be kind. You will make a lot of decisions which aren't the best decisions in retrospect. I think you need to keep reminding yourself that at that time it felt right, and therefore it's okay. So forgive your mistakes. Be willing to fail repeatedly. Um, as long as you keep learning from them, don't think of them as failures. Be your own support system, but also surround yourself with people if you can, but also be firm with yourself. Hold yourself to high standards. Make sure that you're chipping away at, this target that you've set for yourself. And every day, one step forward. Some days it's going to be 10 steps forward, but every day it should be at least one step forward. That's what I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I will share a little bit of my experience on this particular thing. And before that, Shubhangi says that think and swim is the best strategy highlighted here. Absolutely, that is true. So there was a time where when I started off, and we had a shaky start because we had a different kind of a setup where we were a group of people, and then we kind of decided to move it to being a single person, running the business. So what I used to do is, and as you very rightly said, that a solopreneur is quite lonely. You don't have anyone, you don't have a think tank, you don't have a sounding board, or you don't have anybody who's going to, you bounce off the idea and kind of retaliates back. So, you're staring at a blank wall basically, and obviously the blank wall is not going to answer any of the questions or the dilemmas that you may experience. So what I started to do is I started to set targets for myself, as you said. And at the end of the month, I used to prepare a board note as if I'm submitting it to a board.
Yeah, why not?
Being very, very, sorry, critical about it in terms of what targets was set, what was achieved, why was there a gap, what was the variable, kitna difference tha, kyun tha, what worked, what didn't work. And I started to do that. But then again, you're a human at the end of the day. You're not a machine who's going to just start, getting it all like this. So then I said, okay, now this is done. I did it for a few months. Now what? So I created my board of people, and I chose the ones who were the most critic. All right. So that they would actually question you, as you said. And I think I'm a firm believer of that, that while you may be an entrepreneur, you're your own boss, but that cannot take away the accountability and the responsibility that you have chosen yourself, that I need to run this business. It's very easy to shut shop, right? But to restart it, or it's very easy to say that, okay, fine, you know what, this is not working, I'm done. And I don't think there would be any entrepreneur, Mansi, and correct me since you've dealt with so many of them, who would not have had this feeling कि यार हो गया है मेरा, I'm done, I want to shut shop.
I
हो
think
गया.
every day, I think every
Every
entrepreneur feels this every day.
Yeah, and then I think but the key lies in that, okay, you then step back and take a more broader view and see that, okay, what is your ultimate vision and mission. You go back to the drawing board. I think that's very important. And to add what even Lena is saying, and Lena also helps in a lot of coaching and understanding a lot of things. So good insights coming from that. Network and contacts are a great support. Accountability is vital. Friends are always available. Vision boards are great. Of course, so I think pretty much we're all on the same page कि बहुत जरूरी है कि हम वो एक responsibility. I think and since most of us are moms over here, I think running a business plan is also like the way we run our household or the way we manage our kids. We set goals for them. And then we keep telling our children, ki beta, be accountable, be responsible for what you're doing. You give them obviously age appropriate guidance. I think similarly, you think, Mansi, that the way we nurture a child and we set milestones which are age appropriate, we give them accountabilities and responsibility as they grow. Similarly, a business, can it be nurtured like a child, wherein the expectations are basis the aging of the business, the the at what stage the business is, initial stage, how much have you actually given time to it, and a lot of things, by or rather just say, okay, I'm done. What's your thought on that?
No, absolutely. But Ekta, let me take this in a slightly different perspective, though. I would say rather than the business, think of yourself as the child. You know, You don't expect the child to be perfect at something when they've started learning it, right? Um, let's say, your child is learning to just walk. Of course, they're going to stumble in the beginning, right? You don't just give up and say, okay, forget it. You'll never learn how to walk. That makes no sense. You usually will be kind, you will support them, and you will give them assistance to make it easier for them as they learn to do it on their own 2 feet. And I think we need to do the same thing to ourselves. We need to treat ourselves as children as well and be kind to ourselves. Saying that accountability is important, of course, it's important. But kindness and nurturing, I think, is even more important because you are going to have a lot of failures in the beginning. Success is not going to come immediately. It is not a sprint. Just like a child takes time and they are learning every day, so will you. So I think for an entrepreneur, think of yourself as a child. And of course, as you sort of get more confident, you can, transfer those feelings to your business. But I think for me, being kind to yourself is really important. Um, and balancing that, of course, with being, accountable. So you will constantly force your children to be better. You will force them to realize their true potential, just the way you should with yourself. But at every step of the way, you will encourage them. You will be sort of their cheerleaders and you will celebrate each small achievement, right? So I think we just need to do the same with ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we spoke about the practical challenges that you spoke about, and you did touch upon the process and the people. So, in addition to that, are there any other emotional challenges, that you were talking about in the beginning, as you broke the challenges into two parts?
No, I think I covered most of them in brief when I spoke about understanding yourself as a person. I think Ekta, if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges which I feel perhaps women deal with a little bit more than men, and with
Absolutely.
a disclaimer that each of us have had different kinds of opportunities growing up. So not everybody will necessarily relate to all of these challenges, but I think we need to be mindful of the fact that not everybody has grown up with the same opportunities. So, I think as women, we just recognizing that these challenges exist, for the gender as a whole is important because it'll allow us to be, greater support for each other. And I think
Surely.
and I think like the kind of platforms, like this platform, I think these are just amazing tools to fight these challenges for women as a whole. So I think the first challenge that I have noticed that a lot of women struggle with is this creeping feeling of being an imposter. I feel that this is something that because see, the fact is that I mean, men cannot have babies, right? So they are not taking a couple of years break from their professional careers. They are not the ones who need to necessarily divide their time in the same fashion. um, and family expectations are also often very different for women. So I think women do struggle with those constraints, right? And so the kind of time constraints, expectations from them in the way they prioritize personal and professional. I think that's a challenge that women normally struggle with a lot more. The second challenge that I feel that women struggle with is, like we discussed before, financial independence or access to money and being able to take independent decisions with what to do with that money. So, what will happen is either if you're very fortunate, you will be surrounded by people who are, going to just let you do it your way. But I think, we live in a society where women will need to answer to a lot of people for the kind of these decisions that they're making. And that might put a lot of, stress over the expectation for the business to be a success very soon. So, कि अच्छा 3 महीने हो गए हैं, तुम इतने पैसे खर्च कर चुके हो, अभी तक तो कुछ हुआ नहीं. This is a waste of time, right? So I think those kind of things can be a big constraint. On the flip side, what I found is that often um, women are surrounded by people who love them too much and want them to just be comfortable. कि यार क्या जरूरत है काम करने की, घर पे बैठो, मजे करो, and I think that's also a big constraint, because in a way then you are trying to convince people that this is not my hobby, I'm not doing this for time pass. I hate those conversations, acha chalo, acha hai, it'll fill your time, it'll keep you busy. And I feel that kind of uh, condescending speech can be really a downer for women. And it can make you sort of question, like I said, the imposter syndrome creep, that am I really as serious a businesswoman as somebody else? Because everybody around me is telling me I'm doing this to keep myself busy. It's my hobby. And it's okay if I fail, because nobody needs my money, ghar to sab sahi chal raha hai, right? So this is just something extra I'm doing. And I think that's a big challenge that women struggle with a lot. And all of this, ultimately, it's coming with mastering your own mindset, right? Because see, what's happening outside, what is being said to you, that is not in your control. Ultimately, what's in your control is the way you react to it and the way you sort of are able to deal with that, right? So I think women really need to be much more resilient and a lot more self-aware about the kind of situation that they're in and the kind of actions that they will need to take. I think for a lot of women, they will need to change a lot of their behavior if they truly want to uh, make this, like, give it a serious go. Because the fact is, entrepreneurship is not easy. There will be times when you'll feel guilty about taking time away from your family. There will be times when you will feel that you are needing to explain yourself, or to um, maybe fight for certain money, or independence, or time, or space, or whatever it is, right? And I think that is something which women need to learn, that they should not be apologizing for, right? I think that's, unfortunately, I think we don't have enough role models, though that's changing a lot. We don't have enough exposure platforms that allow women to get this exposure and give them this confidence, right? So again, I would say platforms like this are really critical for women, because they remind you, look, you're not the only one. Here are a lot of other people like you who are doing it. They are not apologizing. Their kids are doing fine, okay? Kids are working, women are doing fine. You're not, you don't need to apologize for taking time away. You don't need to apologize for prioritizing yourself and your own, you know, goals, your own vision. So, yeah, that's just something I'd like to say, that for women, it can get a little bit harder, regardless of whether they are surrounded by people who are trying to make it easier or trying to make it harder. And a lot of it is because of just your own thought process. What do you think, Ekta?
Well, let me, I was looking at some of the comments also that were coming, but I'm going to read them a little later and maybe share, some statistics for all our members here who may have wanted to be entrepreneurs, or who may have, who are entrepreneurs, but they, forget about what the external environment tells you. It's also about us. How serious are we about the work that we do? Or are we very casual that, acha, theek hai, I'm a business person, but then, oh, I have this kitty party to attend. Let me go there, or I have this. So, how much of a priority you give to your work, and at the same time manage your personal affairs. I think that's also very important. But just to put some numbers in place, almost about 20, close to 21% of the small medium enterprises are led by women. And if you look at overall percentage of women entrepreneurs in a country is about 14%. That's about 8 million. That's not a very big number. But I think Mansi, the issue I feel is that we ourselves many a times are our own enemies when it comes to the success of a business, because of all those things that you said, that yes, you know either we don't have a role model. You're right, in a lot of places, in a lot of industries, businesses are headed by men. A lot is changing. Obviously, if I talk about the financial space, women are especially being hired now to bring in that aspect of empathy, to bring in that more holistic view, for the sheer inherent abilities that a woman brings in to the business. We are nurturing, we have a longer term approach, and so on and so forth. So I think it is important for us to know yourself, what you mentioned in the emotional challenges that we have, because until and unless we know ourselves, whether it is in terms of our skill set, our approach to do work, or how serious are we to do something that we wanted to do, you know this whole conversation, as you said, that acha theek hai, you're doing this because you want to fill in your time. I think we need to stand up, we need to rise to the occasion and say that no, I am doing this because I want to do this. This is my work, and I am serious about it. And I think the mindset of the environment will only change when our own mindset changes. And if I remember it right, I think the theme for last year's Women's Day was not about equality; it was about equity. About having that equal opportunity in the given framework. So there can never be an equality, because there are fundamental differences which exist in the genders, in the two genders that are there. We cannot deny that there are responsibilities that a women need to shoulder, which is not, which men cannot do it. Those are biological situations, challenges, which is, we have to just go beyond that and not fuss and crib. And within the resources, within the scheme of things that we have, if you're able to understand where our strength lies, I think that's a huge starting point, is the way I look at it, to overcome these challenges. Because I think the emotional challenges that you spoke about, they will definitely supersede the practical challenges, because वो तो बहुत बात की बात है, it's like you want to be an entrepreneur, but there is कि आप क्या करोगे, most often than not, you know women entrepreneurs don't get loans from banks, because when they start looking through the papers, it comes out that she's just a trophy business person. The main person behind is actually the man. So so those challenges are definitely there. But anyhow, again, a conversation which is very close to my heart, so one can just go on and on about it. But yes, I would like to read a few comments. So Rashmi Sanganira says that yes, the basic rule of learning of life applies to every field of life. And I think all these things that you spoke about or we've discussed are so relevant to anything and everything that we do in life. It's not just specific to being an entrepreneur. Support structures are a great blessing, is what I'm trying to figure out. Whose comment is this? Says Shweta Sundar, and she's saying that very nice and valuable info that's being shared by you, Mansi. Okay. Lena says, I love the confidence with which you speak, Mansi. And okay, thank you, Shweta. She's saying that MHC has been a stupendous platform for many like me to explore our potential. Yes. Well, I won't take the credit completely that Motherhood Club has been able to harness a lot of people's potential, but I think it's a give and take equation, because you are willing to do, and here is a platform where you can do it, so it's happening. And I think, as all of us who have been here, we've all grown together. And I think, Mansi, do you also think that a lot of women, when they come up with these ideas, their ideation, okay, perhaps this might be my last question, and we'll keep the time limit in mind, but as ideation, our ideation is also very limited, कि मैं यही कर सकती हूँ क्योंकि ये मेरी जो कंडीशनिंग है, मेरी जो स्टीरियोटाइपिंग है, I can only do these kind of businesses. I cannot set up a manufacturing unit. I cannot get into finance. I cannot do something which is very industrial in nature. Those cliches that are there. Does that the upbringing that we've had, the social conditioning that we've been exposed to, does that also restrict us to actually think beyond the obvious?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact is that you've grown up hearing certain things. You've grown up in a certain society where women do these set of specific tasks, men do these other specific tasks. Women have these specific interests, men have these other interests. And I think that gets reinforced time and again through social media, through, pop culture, and through the people around you. So I think we do restrict ourselves in what we allow ourselves to think. And I feel, and this is something that I've personally felt a lot. I feel that often, unfortunately, even the people that we go to for advice are not able to steer us in the right direction because either they themselves are struggling with the same stereotypes or they are men and they don't even understand your question in the same way, or they're not able to put themselves in your shoes, which is why I feel that this um, I'm seeing more and more women business coaches coming up, and I think that's so great because ultimately, there are certain conversations which require, I would say, a safe space and the ability to ask controversial questions, but also the ability to be vulnerable, which is easier for you to do if you're talking to a woman, because that person will be able to perhaps relate to your circumstance a little bit better, and also, be able to help you open up your mind, in a more expansive way, but by asking the right questions. Another thing which I think is, really, again, like you said, it's inhibition, is that I think you see businesses being run in a certain way. And because most of them are being run by men, that certain way is not possible for you, right? It is not possible for a lot of women to leave the house at 8:30 in the morning and reach back home at 9 p.m. and say that, okay, ghar apne aap chal jayega, right? That's not possible. And then they grow up thinking that, well, if I can't do that, then I can't run a business, while not realizing that there are many women who figured out how to manage both by not holding themselves to the same standards of working that men have created, right? The fact is that right now we are living in this blessed age where actually, technology, this entire sort of new age businesses that have come in, whether you're a social media influencer, whether you're an online retailer, you're doing all kinds of service based work, there are it's so easy for you to do it both and do it in your way. So I think that's also really important, that you go to the right person for advice, because if you go to the wrong person, it's like sort of, you go to a nutritionist and that nutritionist gives you a food plan which requires you to buy these crazy exotic ingredients and create, like, cook your own food every day. That's not sustainable. You can't do it. Ultimately, you need a nutritionist who will understand the kind of food that your family already eats and incorporates that into your diet plan, right? Similarly, you need a mentor or a coach who understands the kind of lifestyle you lead, and then is able to fit your business and way of working within that. Because if that doesn't happen, ultimately you will feel that it's impossible for me to do it, you know and I think that is something which is really important, that we all who have successful businesses are able to, sort of pull somebody else up along with us and say that, look, it doesn't have to be that hard. You've got a, you've just had a baby. Great. You need to have 30 minutes free from work every 2 hours so that you can be there for the baby. Or in your operating margin, you need to incorporate the cost of having a nanny. Or, you need to make sure that you're budgeting for daycare. or you need to make sure that you are only taking calls or appointments during this certain time while your children are at school. And I think that's really important, where women can really provide much more valuable advice to other women because they understand the kind of questions that are being asked.
Absolutely. Shweta says that square pegs can't fit into round holes, right? Mentorship and coaching essential. Absolutely, Mansi. And I think we're going to close this conversation at a high. And as what Mansi said, that there are ways and means to do it, and I'm an example. I've been running my entrepreneurship for the last 11 years now, of which 10 years of my marriage and 7 years of my baby. I worked till the last day of my pregnancy before I delivered. I worked immediately after my delivery. Not that I'm boasting about it. Some may think it was a foolish thing to do. But the point is that, yes, you need to create that kind of environment. You need to have that support system. And yes, each of us may not have that kind of environment. But I think our own expectations are set by us. You want to set realistic expectations and achieve what you wish to. You want to set your own barometers of success, or you want to be kind of giving it up to the expectations of people around you, the success that somebody else has defined, while somebody else's definition is theirs. You need to define your own success. So, Mansi, before we say thank you and bye bye to you, is there one more piece of advice that you'd like to give to all our viewers watching on all three platforms that we are live at? And I'm sure we'd love to hear more from you. Would love to have more insights from you on an ongoing basis. And in case anybody wishes to be in touch with Mansi, you can get in touch with me and I can put you on to Mansi. And so, Mansi, one last piece of advice that you would like to give.
That's a tough one. The one piece of advice. What I would like to say, Ekta, is that there are many ways of being successful and being happy. Okay. Um, Not everybody needs to be the CEO of a large company. Not everybody needs to be the perfect mom. Not everybody needs to be the perfect homemaker. We need to feel happy in what we are doing, and we need to define what is success for us, you know. And we need to be really careful that we also allow other people to define their own success. Um, that's all I'd like to say. I just want people to realize that everyone's life is meaningful, it's purposeful, and everybody's purpose need not be the same for it to have meaning.
Absolutely lovely. This journey of perfection is an illusion. Lina, very true. Do visit again, Mansi. We'd love to hear from you, is what Ila is saying. So thank you so much, Mansi. And very interestingly, while we close this conversation about identifying our own skills, defining our own success, and not let anybody else define it for us, it's going to lead us to a very, very interesting conversation tomorrow at 5 p.m., where we will be talking to yet another coach, but a parenting coach, Priyanka Tiberwala, who's going to be talking about topper in school or topper in life. So I think that, all that we discussed today also means that we all need to look back into our growing years as to what was the kind of exposure, the kind of challenges, the biases, the stereotyping that we were all exposed to, and which means that as parents here, as grandparents, we might need to relook at our style of parenting or grandparenting. So we will hear a lot more from Priyanka tomorrow on this at 5 p.m. So don't forget to join us at 5 p.m. And thank you so much, Mansi, for a very, very interesting, engaging conversation. And thank you, everyone who was here, for your insights, for your questions, to make this conversation even more engaging and interesting. And we'll surely love to have you back again, Mansi. So thank you so much. And thank you from the entire team of Motherhood Club, which is Monica Goel Devan, Ila Pachori, and myself. Take care
Thank you
and
so much,
all the very
Ekta,
best
for
for your
inviting me.
upcoming
I had a
session.
lovely time.
All the best for your upcoming session also.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone. See you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Till then, stay safe And take care, everyone. Signing off for today.